So, Mr. Lum, so honored to have you here to interview you, and I'm honored to be in the presence of justices of Delhi High Court. Let me give you a little background. Delhi High Court is regularly being seen as if the best high court in India for many reasons. I have had friends who are practicing law now in Delhi and they don't want to go practice anywhere else. I haven't even told, I didn't indulge in telling the justices the name of some of my friends practicing in front of them, as for ethical reasons. I want to stay clear of that. But I want to just tell you that it's been an honor to be in their presence. And this is an august group that has a tremendous experience in mediation. And I think Mr. Lum will be very helpful if you take us a little bit into your journey in life. Share with us how come you were professor of Richardsburg, and from there you went on to teaching in some courses, and then from there you went into Obama administration. You have done some tremendous work in public policy sector. You've been a mentor to many students that I know of, and you've been a change maker here in America. So I really want your story to be known to the audience, please.
Well, thank you for that. The place I would start would be, I went to law school with the idea that I wanted to be either a civil rights attorney or a prosecutor. That was my, that was my view of what lawyers do here. And when I went to law school, I decided my first year to take a class on negotiation. I really thought negotiation was how to make the other side do what you wanted to do. I really thought it was how to bang the table and try to get more from the other side. And I took the course from a couple of gentlemen, Roger Fisher and Bruce Patton. Some of you may know of them. They co-wrote a book called Getting to Yes, along with Bill Urey here. And they were so different from my other professors. We had like the Socratic method, right? You had to stand up in the middle class. I hated doing that when I was in law school. They were so different. They actually said, "Oh, call me Roger, or call me Bruce," and they used whiteboards instead, a lot. And they told us to brainstorm and to separate the people from the problem and things like that. I enjoyed it. I took the course. I said, "This is fun. It was interesting." And I kind of a little bit forgot about it. And then in my third year, we have a winter session, an intersession between where you take one course for 4 weeks. But I found out that you could be a teaching fellow or a teaching assistant for a class. And you could make really good money. And I thought, wow, I would rather make some money during my last year of law school. I was a little bit burnt out. And I was a TA or teaching fellow.
Which year was this?
This is my third year of law school.
And 1929?
1929. It was, again, just to reveal my age, it was 1991.
Wow.
It was 1991, January.
We need to get a secret of how Mr. Lum looks like, first of all, right?
Because you look like a law student only.
I know, right? Yes.
So it was 1991, and that's when I was a teaching fellow. That's where Richard Burke was one of my students. But what was amazing was what was really truly amazing was at that time, Roger was working with the African negotiators from the African National Congress, you're right at the end of apartheid. You're with the then all-white South African government. So there were representatives of those bodies in our class.
Wow.
So we had students who were, and why they were there was because Roger had done a training for them in South Africa, and there were some who hadn't been able to go to the original training.
Right.
So they had some of them come to be our students.
May I just interject just a second? Some of you may already know Roger Fisher, some of you may not. Roger Fisher happens to be literally one of the most prominent names in negotiation mediation literature in this country, a pioneer in the movement, and is so lucky for Mr. Lum to be Roger Fisher's student and co-worker.
Yeah, and that really, it does change my life.
Absolutely.
It basically changes the entire direction of my life. They were just amazing, first of all, that they really altered, I think, negotiation, the definition of that in this country and around the world, right? That negotiation could be more than tactics of bullying or whoever has the most power or leverage, though that power and leverage do matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter in negotiation here, but to be able to play a role in helping these negotiators negotiate a new constitution for their country post-apartheid was really impactful on me as a person who cared about change, who wanted to make change. And so I was running my group of 24. We would have 150 students for the plenary, and then 2 graduate law students would then run a group of 24. Rich Burke was one of the students. But what was astounding was that Doug Stone, who wrote a book called Difficult Conversations, who was on faculty, came to watch me run the group. And we had a colonel, we had CEOs, we had all these amazing, we had the law students there, but we had all these, and then you had all these folks. And he said, wow, you're pretty good. You should consider joining a firm that Roger Fisher, Bruce Patton, Howard Rafa, who was a Harvard Business School professor who focused on game theory, was also part of, to join that firm. And I decided to do that, to change my entire trajectory. And to fast forward a little bit, I then joined what was called Conflict Management Inc., and we would go around the world providing mediation and training in negotiation, and makes a huge, and then I'm able to do just incredible things. I start to do a lot of labor management mediation, of collective bargaining, which is very interesting. I was able to work in situations where there have been student protesters who took over universities in dealing with that, involved with trade negotiators as well. So it was a pretty wonderful experience. And that was really the foundation. I would start down if you would like me to go further, but that's really the foundation of what led to my career.
Thank you for that, Pause. And in India, to my knowledge, and that may have changed, my apologies if that's the case, we are emphasizing a lot on mediation. You use the word negotiation about 4 or 5 times in the last 10 minutes. I'm really intrigued. I think there's a nice space that we need to fill here. Why do we need to understand negotiation when we are talking about mediation?
I love that question. I didn't learn this until about 2 years ago. But as you mentioned, I went to work with a group called the Rebuild Congress Initiative. So I worked with a lot of our political leaders.
Rebuild Congress.
The Rebuild Congress still needs work. American Congress still needs some work. But and I'm happy to talk about that a little bit later. But I worked with Bruce Patton, one of the co-authors of Getting to Yes and Difficult Conversations, a book I would heartily recommend as well. And I learned something I hadn't learned before. This book, Negotiation, Getting to Yes, which is the biggest selling negotiation book. What Bill Urey did was he took a mediation textbook for international mediation, and converted it to a negotiation book. So he really took the concepts of mediation and said, negotiation does not have enough, because when we think of negotiation, the old school thinking was it's about advocacy for your own side, right? It's both thinking about how you affect an outcome versus the effect of what you do. So in mediation, right? Many of you are mediators. You think about both parties at the very least. There may be multiple parties, but at least 2 parties. The idea that you need to understand the other side, and you need to take into account their interests, that the options that you generate need to meet the other side or shared interests, or the idea that what standards or criteria are persuasive to both sides, because that's what the negotiation caricature at least left out. And what Urey, Patton, and Fisher really accomplished is say, you need to take into account this whole other half
Right.
Of it. And that's what mediators, and by the way, some of my best negotiation teachers here, I hired 15 or so negotiation, mediation, dispute resolution teachers. Many of them are on the, this afternoon, you'll be going to the federal court mediator group. Many of their mediators are teachers for me, because I think many of them are partners at law firms, who are advocates, who are litigation partners, but they also volunteer as mediators for the federal court. They have a perspective, they have to change their mindset from a litigator's advocate's perspective to what's going on between these two parties. And I think that really helps them in their teaching of negotiation. So that's a wonderful question.
Beautiful answer.
Yeah.
Almost you're telling us, we had a good discussion, so I know you missed the last part yesterday, with Victor Baba from one of the GEMS fellows from Africa, from South Sudan and Kenya. And he brought this idea of expanding the definition of mediation. So in a way you're saying negotiation, we can be stuck in the competitive way of thinking. There's a new way of thinking published in Cambridge, that is the integrative way, interest-based way of thinking.
Right.
So in a way we are discussing changing mindsets,
Right.
whether through these definitions or not. Now, I'm sure my colleagues, I'm very interested to knowing your passion from where you share teaching, being with a law firm, working with these amazing folks, to coming to public work, coming to...
Yeah. By the way, I just noticed we're sort of matching it with pen shoes today. We did not plan this today as well. But yeah. So I was doing the work. I was traveling too much. I remember my first child being born, and for the first 4 months I was on the road every week. And it was actually one of the most successful mediations I'd ever done. And it was a San Diego collective bargaining. I'm happy to talk about that. It was the first one I was leading as first chair kind of thing. So it was very powerful. But it made me decide to think about something else, not because of public service or anything else. I've always thought of my career as one, I went to law to make a difference, to make change. So I think that's true. I started my own company because I found a way. We're in Silicon Valley of creating a company where I could not have to travel so much. Like I created a company that did negotiation training here, and that led me to then become a professor. I started teaching as an adjunct. Stanford would not hire me initially when I wanted. Nobody would hire me. I started Dominican, and then I started taught at UC Law Staff. I taught.
Can you pause for a second? I want you to please be with me and feel the culture of America. Did you hear how honestly Grand Lum shared with us? Nobody would hire me.
This was true. It was. But I slowly worked my way to teaching as an adjunct. As a part-time person. After starting my company, there is something. Teaching, taking a class changed my life, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. It actually is a part of my story of why I returned to Stanford, or returned to full-time teaching, was because I feel like this is my last station or last chapter, and I want to give back to the field that has given so much to me. But back to the question on public service, I then do a similar position to what I do here. I'm become a professor at UC Law Staff, then what's called Hastings Law School, and I really loved it. But it just, what happened, I'm born and raised in San Francisco. I thought I would spend the rest of my life here. It just turned out that a classmate of mine from law school decided to run for president. And this is what happened. And I decided, I was a professor at Hastings at UC Law Staff, and I become actively involved in the Obama campaign.
So he was your classmate?
He was my classmate at law school. We always knew he was destined for great things. Though I will say, if I had been more Machiavellian, I would have gotten to know him better. I did play basketball with him a couple times, and he's a wonderful person. But I was really at the time more excited about what he represented for this country and what it would mean. And it was also just really fun because a lot of classmates became part of his campaign. So it became like I would go speak on his behalf in Texas and all these other places, and I would see his classmates. So it was one of the, one of your later questions I know is what was one of the most meaningful things. It was really meaningful to help him get elected. I will say, from my perspective here, and when he won, I just got swept up. I decided, why not consider, if I could, join his administration here, and that led me first to joining the Small Business Administration. I ran a federal $23 billion contracting program there. The job of running the Community Relations Service, a community civil rights dispute resolution agency, wasn't available at the moment because the Republican appointee was still there. But eventually, that I do get nominated by the president. I get confirmed by the Senate unanimously, which does not happen at all anymore because of the division within our politics. But I was approved unanimously at the time, and that really does that's how I really get full-time to public service at that point.
Tell us about this job, because India, we have leaders here who can make that change, who can at least talk to the administration and bring up a job like that, even though they are busy and they may not have time.
Right.
Tell us about this job. Tell us what does it mean? Yeah.
No, that's great. That's a really wonderful question on how to think about it. Because when I was in the Obama administration, I would often meet, and I think I met with a delegation from India too, about and France and many other countries, about how to create a similar agency. So the agency is called the Community Relations Service. It was created by the 1964 Civil Rights Act in this country. And to your point, interestingly, during the 1960s and the Civil Rights era, there were a lot of protests, right? There was the struggle in Birmingham, where basically blacks boycott white businesses in Birmingham. And the Department of Justice attorneys were the ones who mediated the end result, the settlement in that situation. But they said, this is too much work for us. We're supposed to be litigating, not mediating. So Lyndon Baines Johnson, the then president of the United States, says, let's create an agency to handle the mediation.
It's a federal agency.
The federal agency.
It's a federal, so India we got central government agency.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And it is the first federal legislation creating community dispute resolution in this country. The first federal legislation, which leads to the growth of community dispute resolution in this country. And there's many, I don't know if you have this in India, but we have community mediation centers.
Yeah.
And that is an offspring of this 1964 Civil Rights Act, because it's a movement of, you can settle your neighborhood, your landlord-tenant disputes, that sort of thing. So they are, you have something similar in India. So that is a part of this whole community relations service, and is involved in many of the most prominent civil rights disputes in this country. It helps settle the March from Selma, Montgomery, Boston, the public schools desegregation in this country. CRS is very involved in, and fast forward to my time, we handle some of the biggest disputes in the country around Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, Trayvon Martin in Florida, and Freddie Gray and other situations. So we are actively mediating between police chiefs, protesters, government officials, and that. And it was quite intense. It was probably one of the most intense periods of my career.
Would you break it up for us? So you have a list of mediators you employ?
That's a great question. No, we had 15 offices throughout the country, and you had local mediators full-time doing the work in resolving disputes, and that matters. This is a good question, sense of people who who are known by law enforcement, who are known by this community leaders and nonprofit leaders. They are local to
They have
that.
relationship.
Yeah, the relationships.
Mr. Chandyok, who's a leader here, is teaching me. He's teaching me a lot. But one of the things he's teaching me is this word relationship. So they are so there's trust between community and these mediators.
Yeah, and that's your list of questions made me think about that. I do come back to that. Whether it's trust, experience, credibility, cultural expertise, or knowledge, somehow you have to. My sense of what it means to be a successful mediator in these situations is, if these parties are warring against each other in whatever way, they may not trust each other. They may not trust each other at the end of mediation, but they do need to trust or view you as non-biased, non-partisan, neutral, whatever the term you want. And that's the trick, right? How do you accomplish that? Because that's what unlocks it. I've loved mediation. I have loved it. It is a way of taking a situation that seems hopeless, intractable, and to getting them to a place sometimes where they become buddies afterward, right? It's an amazing. I'm sure you've experienced it in your very successful mediation career as well. But that's the trick. That's how do you accomplish that?
I want to pause here and invite you to before we move on to next question, because and I have one hand, and anybody else want to chat into? So the reason is, this community relations service is a great idea that you may want to think about in India or in a different levels or different criteria, but also because I just want to share with you, highlight the dispute Mr. Lum shared, the 3 disputes he shared. They are very difficult conflicts. Race is involved, religion could also be involved, communities are involved. So I would say in India, when you think about Ayodhya conflict, for example, right, would be a similar density. And I know we had a mediation there, and you know more about that than I do. But I want to pause here and see the question, please.
You mentioned civil rights a couple of times, maybe more than that. I think one of the greatest lawyers, civil rights lawyers in the United States has been Thurgood Marshall.
Sure.
Represented NAACP.
Right.
And recently, in fact, I happened to watch a movie Thurgood Marshall, played by Chadwick Boseman.
Yes.
Unfortunately, passed away of cancer.
Right.
What can you talk about the influence that he may have had on you as a civil rights expert, lawyer?
Wow. That's perfect. Often when I have slides, I'll often show Thurgood Marshall's picture. I also will show Perry Mason, which is how many Americans, older Americans, will see, because he was a litigator. But Thurgood Marshall was the person that I first became aware of as a civil rights lawyer. I mean, he would be an obvious one, right? I think about, he had a huge influence on this country, for sure, and on me personally, that you could fight within the system to make a difference. And even before he becomes a Supreme Court justice, he is, as you said, a long-time lawyer for the NAACP, an advocacy group for African Americans in this country. And they had a very long-term strategy, right? NAACP gets created in the early 1900s, at a time very similar in America's history to today, a very difficult period of American history where we had no trust in our institutions here. And they create a very long-term strategy for how to make change in this country, what cases to take to the courts, what's the right precedent, where is the court today? So there's many things I still take from Thurgood Marshall and many other leaders, including Constance Baker Motley and other leaders. But he was an example of a person who constantly fought for change, but who saw the big picture. And I do see, like, the community relations service as the example of that. Why was it created? Because the idea was, you can't litigate your way out of everything. That you couldn't, if there was going to be all these conflicts in the after 1964 of trying to desegregate restaurants, stores, schools. You couldn't litigate each one. You needed mediators to go help settle them very peacefully and well here. And it's a longer term strategy. So I do think of mediation as a part of how we think of law and policy in this country, and for society as a whole. And I think Thurgood Marshall was a wonderful pioneer.
So maybe for the audience, it'd be good to know that, you know, the time when he was there as a black Afro-American, he was not allowed to argue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in those days, things were very different.
Yeah.
So the white man had to argue.
Right.
The law firm he had presented was the partner, so to speak. And so it was back in the day, it was very different.
It's a very different world.
We cannot even imagine now how things were at the time.
Yeah, and that's absolutely the case. It's hard to even imagine it today, but he worked within it and wasn't frustrated by it, and helped lead to I think a better society as a whole.
Mr. Lum, give me 1 second. One thing, just to finish a couple of questions and then take another set of questions from audience. I have one here. We all are in search of meaning of life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quoting from Viktor Frankl's book, Meaning of Man, Search for Meaning. But meaning as a judge, as a sitting justice of one of the top high courts in India, meaning as being ex-solicitor general, meaning of being a leader of an organization called Madhyam, meaning of being a director of one of the top national program in the country, meaning as ex-director of the number one.
Oh, I knew you had to get that in at some point.
Of the number one ranked as number two. But our meaning is what brings me here. It's the community that's giving me meaning, right? It's my elders in this room and youngers who are giving me meaning. There must have been something that has been the most meaningful to you, or few events in your life, or your experiences. Many of us have different life experience than you. What can you share with us that, having worked with Obama administration as a leader in CRS program, among other things, as a leader of a program like Stanford, which aspect gave you really deep meaning to your life, to your work?
It's such a hard question. It's like asking who's your favorite child, right? You have a lot of different experiences here. I mean, it's hard to ask that question. Not first of all, I would say think of my family, right? The think of the most meaningful things are when they sacrificed for me. It was a great sacrifice. And I think I'll connect it to Obama. I was in my daughter had just finished her first year of high school, and I had been nominated by the president for this agency. I had not yet been confirmed by the Senate. But we told our kids that if I got confirmed, that we would be moving from the Bay Area to Washington, D.C. And we were in China at the time. We were in China, and I got a text that I had been confirmed. My daughter heard that, and we were in a store. She started crying and ran out because she was really unhappy that we would have to be moving here. So, I think she has forgiven me. I think she has forgiven me. But it goes to, I believe so much in wanting to work for the Obama administration, and you recognize there's sacrifices made for that. But my daughter today, she is an environmental advocate. She believes in something, and she creates something called climate cafes that are gatherings of people and focused on wellness for people suffering from anxiety or existential fear about climate. It's been covered in the New York Times. It's gotten coverage for it. But my grace, it's wonderful to know that she cares about something to make a difference for. But it does go hand in hand with not all these things that you do, to accomplish what you have in your careers as mediators, as advocates, as justices. There's always there's always some equation on that. And it come back into like working in the Obama administration and being able to bring all the experiences that I had in my life to some really hard situations. It felt like such a test. It felt like every day I was managing conflicts within my staff, with other departments of DOJ, with protest groups, with conservative groups. It was so hard. But I felt very lucky to say, well, this is where I am, and what can I bring us to a better place. I mean, Eric Holder, who is the Attorney General who I served at the time, said the hardest decision he had to make as Attorney General was whether or not to go to Ferguson, Missouri, because there had been protests and there had been riots and there had been burning there, because the fear was that if he went and it got worse, he would have been blamed, Obama would have been upset and all that. And he went, and we played a huge role. I set up 4 meetings within 48 hours for him. And I remember being very afraid that night, but it calmed down. It changed the dynamic there. So I do feel like I was in a place where I could do something to help the country.
It's beautiful. 2 observations. One, I love that you're so humble. You don't say, I did this, I've done that. You're so careful about how you explain your experience. Number 2, I also have a daughter, and I'm very proud of her, and I think about her quite a bit, even when I'm away from her for 10 days. And I can see a proudness in you when you talk about your daughter. So congratulations. Reminds me of the longest study in US. I believe was from your alma mater that discussed happiness and what brings happiness to people, and people at the very end of their life. You can tell the audience what the study found. I can tell.
Well, was this not the Arthur Brooks one?
It's the one where they found that
the
real
family connections, the one where they studied the guys most initially, right?
So they studied guys over 50, 60 years. So someone who is getting out of law school and then they become attorney general or chief justice of the state, and they went back to the person, especially when the person was on I believe, was close to deathbed or very elderly age, and they asked, what was the most important part to you in your life? And they were expecting money or status or cars or hotels or whatever, and literally everybody in the study said it was relationships in our family, especially connections with our family. And you brought your daughter up, so thank you. So we are getting trained in mediation, even though most of them don't need a training in mediation. But getting back to the mediation topic, what did the field of public service teach you about mediation?
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. The public service and mediation here.
And I'm thinking, to give you a few more seconds, I'm thinking a lot of our leaders today need perhaps mediation training.
Right.
We need to bring some people in this room who ought to be here.
Right. Yeah. I think we are in a time of increased polarization. Right. We're in a time of high division. I mean, yesterday there was an assassination of someone who was a activist on the mega side. Today is the anniversary of 9/11 here. What I go to is what I learned from it. I would say first start by saying it really taught me, because I had done a lot more discrete mediations, whether collective bargaining or some sort of dispute between lawyers where more party, plaintiff, defendant, labor management, protester. It really showed me how important. This may not be the answer you're looking for, but boy, it takes a lot to make mediation successful at the central government, federal government level. I talked about community relations service today. It has gone down from 85 to 15 today. Will likely be one in a month, right? So that it's the federal mediation conciliation service I mentioned earlier is gone. So it does make me think about the complexities of mediation. Here's another, in that you need advocacy for it. It doesn't happen by itself. You do need people in powerful positions to back it up. Lyndon Baines Johnson was an example. Janet Reno, an attorney general, was probably helped create the federal dispute resolution. Every agency in this country, I think it still has it. It has to have a dispute resolution representative, and it really expand. Like in many countries, U.S. went through a renaissance where where the foundation supported it. Like the Hewlett Foundation supported so much of dispute resolution in this country. I'm very fortunate. I'm very, very thankful to JAMS, to your employer, because they help support. We haven't talked about the Divided Community Project, where I worked at Ohio State, which is #1 now. In dispute resolution.
Very good program. Especially because of you.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that, but we rely. How does the Divided Community Project work unless JAMS and AAA, unless foundations support it? So it does make me think about the bigger policy issues. Yeah.
You brought up something really important. I want people to know. You said Divided Communities Project, which I think you had a lot to contribute to. But can you explain what that project was?
Yeah, so the Divided Community Project, which was the biggest funding, it's the JAMS Foundation is the biggest recipient of funds. It was started by, I was the first director. After I left CRS, because the idea was we needed something to extend CRS's work. Now, it gets to another point that I think is interesting that your question raises, is because when it is a part of federal government, there are limitations because of the politics. Like there are certain things when like for example, if a certain party is in control, you couldn't do certain kinds of mediations because of there are restrictions that might not exist in the private sector, right? For example, so they're just greater restrictions. But the Divided Community Project tried to take CRS work and extend it further to use dispute resolution to help us solve issues of polarization, especially when it came to politics. Because, for example, when I was at CRS, or anyone at CRS, you couldn't do it. You really had to stay away from the politics. There are certain mediations that I was told by the Attorney General, you can't do that, because if DOJ is perceived as mediating it, or actually mediating it, that could be a problem, because it would look bad to the administration if it wasn't successful. There's a famous one. Elian Gonzalez, there was a young boy who came over with a parent to the United States. This is in the early 2000s in the Clinton administration, and it becomes an international dispute because Fidel Castro wants the child returned. The family in the United States wants to keep the child here. CRS was mediating that. I write about it in the book. I was not the director at the time. Janet Reno was going to go in to mediate it with a CRS mediator. They would not allow her because they could not guarantee 100% that she would come out with Elian Gonzalez. And because there's, like, when you mediate, there's a chance you're not going to succeed. It's up to the clients. It's up to the parties, right? They're the big decision. But here's a situation where, as a mediator, I'm frustrated because there's a chance I can make this safe versus the way it ended up, which is guns pointed at the kid and but that goes to the question. There are a lot of things to think about when a government's involved with a mediation unit of what you can, what you cannot do. It gets much more complicated. And that's the second point that I would make.
Before we move on, I want to take a couple of questions. Purva, you had a question.
First of all, I would like to congratulate you. You're balancing India and US very well. Your feet are in US and your head is in India. So my question is, reading a story about your daughter.
Yeah.
A lot of times, all of us have a situation where we have to choose between work and family. And whatever we choose, we feel guilty for not choosing the other two.
Right.
So how do we get rid of that guilt?
I don't think you can get rid of it. First of all, what I don't like is exactly what you're talking about. I don't like the regret that I have. I don't like that I'll have a dream about about it, and because the regret is still in me somehow. I do think of it as we all make I don't know if it's helpful, but we all make the best decision with the facts that we have at that moment. That's all I could do. If I learned something else later, I didn't have that information down then. Now, I would say the deal with my family was once I did that I wouldn't move the family again. I have not. I've stayed back in the Bay Area. Even though I worked at Ohio State, I worked remotely. So I think that's hard. I think that's partly the negotiation you have with your family members around it. By the way, I would say my younger child, he loved moving to DC so much he didn't want to leave. So you never know how these things. So I think we make the best decision we can, and leaving it at that, and I would say giving ourselves a little grace and not being too hard on ourselves, and being generous to who you were when you made that decision, right? Don't be upset at your past self that made that decision. That you made it the best, and maybe if I learned something, I could make a different choice now. And I would say I gave up since after we moved to DC for 3 years. We moved back. Other opportunities came up to do other things, or I just didn't search for them anymore. I was comfortable with the fact that I just wanted to be here. And I was lucky here, right? The person who ran this for 20 years decided to retire, and I threw my hat in, and I got it. If I didn't get it, I didn't get it, right? I've only been here. This is my 3rd year. So time is moving fast as well. But it's a question we all face.
Good question. Please, yes.
Good afternoon. It's very interesting listening to you and your personal experiences. You mentioned about the speed resolution representatives. I just wanted to understand a little more about this. What is the purpose for creating this, and what kind of cases it is supposed to handle?
Are you talking at Stanford?
I think she's meant to the federal.
Speed resolution representative you mentioned for the community litigation, mediation.
Community
relations.
Community relations. So for the community, what I'm doing now is I'm trying to.
Did you mean Divided Communities Project?
Divided
Community Relations Program at the federal
Oh,
government?
he mentioned a speed resolution representative, and he also mentioned certain cases being just do it for quick resolution.
I think he meant that there should be an advocacy of this in this area of dispute resolution, and there should be a representative for dispute resolution
Okay.
who takes the advocacy forward. I think that's what you meant. I
Okay.
just made a note.
Yes, good. Thank you both for that. Yeah, I don't think we think about that enough for those of us in the field of who's advocating on our behalf to really think through many professions. And there's the American, for us, it's the American Bar Association that advocates on behalf of lawyers, and the American Medical Association that advocates on behalf of that. There are different organizations that do it. There's a California Dispute Resolution Council. There's different organizations, and I think the leadership as for those in the field need to advocate or represent, because the reality is if you don't, you don't. We say this when negotiating, you don't get it unless you ask, unless you have influential backers here. I think JAMS has been, for example, really wonderful at advancing the profession of mediation. JAMS is such a well-known brand, and you've had wonderful leadership here. And I think to move it further, I think we have an incredible person who's leading American Arbitration Association right now, who is a former politician and a judge. here. You need people like that. Bridget, who's incredible. So you need people to be advocates for. You need politicians who come from the mediation. You come from the mediation world who can speak that language as well. So I do think we need more representation, advocacy, organization, coordination in order, because the field grew so much, especially in the 80s and 90s. You've seen some retrenchment. It's no longer the flavor of the month. It's no longer the shiny object that it was in the 80s and 90s. And again, it can vary from country to country to what you have. There needs to be a renaissance, right? We are now in the age of AI. And I think dispute resolution needs to, and there are many of our colleagues who were going into that and thinking really hard about that, because we need to find ways to make dispute resolution more innovative here, right, as well.
I'm going to take you to the lens of culture, if you allow me, folks. I just have a couple of questions left, and then we can open up, maybe 3 questions left. So I want to make an observation and then ask you a question on culture, but because you have such a strong background in cross-cultural work you've done, not just national culture, but community culture, public service versus private service culture, and all of that. But it's just an observation. You so easily saying, let's collaborate, AAA jams, you're throwing these ideas around. And I notice, even though we live in an individualist society, as per Hofstede, America, we are collaborating quite a bit. And our guests, and there are cultures who are coming from collectivist society,
Right.
but there's sometimes less collaboration between institutions. It's almost like competition.
Right. Right. Yeah, and you can see that's a really interesting point. That's a really interesting point. The collectivist.
Pepperdine,
Collectivist cultures. You will see more competition for resource. I've been talking to different states. Like I'm running this lab where our clients will be different states who want to figure out how to provide dispute resolution service. But that issue came up I won't name the state, but it's a state that's known for being more collectivist than other states. But they have a harder time with collaboration, and that could be for several reasons. It could, I think, in that case, again, I'm not going to name the state, where that state is known for a little more like hiring your friends and relatives. Here.
Oh, that doesn't happen in India.
No, I never have to. I'm not going to speak to India. I'm not going to speak to India whatsoever.
Don't hire our relatives at all.
But you can see where you try to keep things within your organization, and you want to focus on your way of doing it there. And it is harder to collaborate because of the culture and because of the way things get done or do not get done, within that state, say. And you can also see, in certain collectivist cultures, right? I'm of Chinese descent. I marveled when I went to Japan. I marveled at how clean it was, and all these things. That doesn't say there aren't huge problems in Japan, but you can also see when there is more conformity, and therefore we just do things the way we want to, and we want to leave out others. You can see why there could be less collaboration here as well. I do, there's an example I can think of. Some of it's a structural issue, right? In many countries, and certainly in the United States, we have a problem with homelessness or houselessness. Yeah. California has spent billions of dollars, as many of you know, on that issue. Part of it is because if the funding is dispersed to many different organizations, then they're competing for those dollars. There's a lot of reasons why Houston, Texas has done a better job with houselessness. at least one structural reason that I found interesting is that if you provide money to one entity who has more control and they disperse, then it can be done, in a more uniform manner here, and you're spending less time fighting here. So it is a little bit less collaboration, right? It is a criticism sometimes that overly collaborative societies don't get things done.
I want to connect your two thoughts now in the previous part and this part. You first said we need to learn to forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
In a way, we need to move on.
Right.
I think it was Purva's question you're referring to. And now you're saying some cultures almost like have an obligation. I think they're both connected in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I was talking to one of our guests in a car that in India, for example, and other collectivist cultures, we also have a lot of domestic help. People help you. Not just domestic help, even in restaurants you go and there's a server standing right on top of you.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to put a samosa from a plate next door.
Yeah.
They will pick the samosa for you. And there's someone pushing elevator door, so you get used to it.
Yeah.
You want that service, right?
Yeah.
And I'm feeling guilty here, just using the word guilt, that I can't provide the service in San Francisco because this is not India. But the question here was, is that a fault of India? And my observation was India has so much structural challenges.
Yeah.
The life itself is so difficult. There is corruption, there is injustice, there is poverty so people who are in this room, they cannot take care of everything.
Right.
So they enjoy some niceties in life because they have to take care of bigger issues that they're handling. Similarly, you're saying in collectivist societies we can have less collaboration because of resources. You use the word is limited. Now that's not the issue of the culture, that's the issue of history. So historically there are less resources.
Historic less short. Which creates those problems for sure.
And then we have looting by people like Britishers.
Yeah.
We had resources and they took it away.
Right. Which makes it so you can point historically, and it's true, right? It's true. The question to me in those situations is, what does a group, an organization, a community, a society do to get out of that situation, to change it? And the question is different for what I as an individual can choose to do. I feel somewhat similarly, right? If I feel like things are horrible around me in this right now, I can't fix everything.
Yes.
I'm just one person. I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but I do think about the question of what can I do with all that frustration and energy that's productive? So in my case, that's why I'm doing a policy lab. My agency has been gutted. It is on the verge of non-existence here. So I don't want to spend my time complaining and getting angry. I try to spend that energy, okay, let me work on this one project. How do we help other states around this country provide more services that we're now missing? So I don't know how you guys think about it, in your worlds, but you framed it really well in terms of it's so difficult. What can I do as an individual? It is a different question as leaders of your country or as leaders, what do I do for my organization or for my community? I do think those are not easy questions here, right? We can point to different, we can point to we can go over the British and how they did partition and how horrible that was and how that created such negativity. People love in Asia to point to Singapore. Like, here's a good example of things getting well done. But there's ugliness behind that story too.
Thank you. That's very, very wise. I want to open up again. Please,
May I ask
Justice Bombard.
Dr. Lum, in a mediation, how do you address a solution which is emerging from the parties, but which does not conform to your sense of fairness? So, to paraphrase it, is fairness at all necessary for a mediated settlement? To give an example, a young child, 5-year-old boy, is subject of a custody battle. The father is the money, the mother is the mother. The mother is giving up custody of the child to the father only because he has the resources, but she doesn't. and assume that you feel this is not really a fair arrangement.
Yeah.
Does that at all figure in?
This is.
I tell you as a judge,
Yeah.
if I was to have to decide a case based on a binding precedent, I can't get out of it, but which does not conform to my sense of fairness, first I would postpone it.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if push comes to shove, I would probably say that, okay, I know I can't do what I would rather have done, but it's not under my watch, so I would not decide it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you do as a mediator?
Wow, that's an age-old mediation question, and one that will stay with us for the rest of our careers, I think. So you framed it so beautifully. Yeah, I don't think of that, right? Earlier, I think I said, right, mediation isn't about, I'm paraphrasing myself here, it's not about the mediator who makes the decision, right? It's the parties that make the decision. I can place in almost every mediation my own sense of fairness of what should be done. I know colleagues who don't want to be mediators because they would rather be. I have colleagues who are now making decisions on what they do post litigation career, and I have I get together with two friends, both are partners at law firms here in the Bay Area. One wants to be a mediator, and one says, I want to be an arbitrator. I do not want. I think for exactly that reason. What are we comfortable with doing? I think that's important. The harder question is, what would I do if I was the mediator in that question, right? I think it is hard. And right, then we get to be evaluative versus facilitative versus directive mediation styles, right? So you can factor that into account. If I were involved, I would ask questions to push on that point, right? Not to say you're wrong. Do you think this is in the best interest of the child to be with the father? How will the child do in this situation? So to get them thinking through, is it fair or is it best? I have a judge. I mean, I know a judge who certainly says, I don't know why we do these family cases. It's like we're the worst people to make these decisions, right? That's not an ideal world. A judge should not be the one making a decision that affects the family, fundamental issues like that, right? I'm going to the hardness of these issues. I want to double click on that for a moment. I think I would try to ask a lot of hard questions of the parties here. What are your interests here? If you think, in the long term the mother might regret it, I might say, how do you think you'll think about this in 5 years? Because they ultimately have, I signed up to be a mediator in that case. They ultimately make the decision. No easy answers, but that's how I would think about it. You give me really hard questions now. I don't like
he's just getting started. Mr. JB Singh.
See, are we not making it very simplistic when we say about individualism and collectivism?
Mm-hmm.
In a certain situation, I can be individualistic, and in the same, in my life, certain situations I could be collectivist.
Sure.
So I mean, how do we create these, separate, two situations?
Right. They are right. I think this can go back to mediation versus negotiation. They're two sides of the same coin, and there may be a percentage in each. If it was 100%, is this a 100% collectivist? Is this a 100% individualist? Is this a 60 collectivist, 40% individualist? Just like a negotiation. Are we trying to just make the deal we want? Or are we trying to just get the deal on my terms? Or are we trying to get a deal or an agreement or a settlement that both sides like equally? Right? They are the yin and the yang of every situation. And I think that's what we struggle with, even if you can go back to the career versus family. Like how do I balance I wouldn't call them two attractive opposites, right? They both have positives and they both have negatives. And as humans, we're going around finding meaning. We're trying to trying to come up with the best solution. I didn't realize our conversation would be a philosophical one, but I
I want to comment on a couple of themes and
Please.
give you a break as well. Look how careful, how compassionate I am to my guests. To Judge Bambani's point about fairness, sir, we taught fairness in a training when I was in LA. We had a 4-hour session on that topic. So your question is very valid. We would ask judges when we train judges, including federal judges, what does fairness mean to you? And we had a discussion between value systems and individual fairness, collective fairness. Also, does the fairness change from the beginning of the mediation to the end of the mediation? And so recently I was being interviewed in India at a very interesting podcast, which I really loved. This gentleman in Punjabi asked me a question about truth. And he was new to mediation and he asked me, whose truth are you serving? And that really made me think, as your question is kind of similar to that in a way. Yours is better framed, of course, but the question is fairness of mine or fairness as one party perceives my process to be fair, or fairness as the other party perceives, or fairness as to all three of us perceiving what is fairness. That's another question. Am I here, so let me make my question or my comment more complex. Am I here to serve the truth of one party or the truth of other party? And is there ever one truth or multiple truths? So I don't have an answer to you, sir, but it's a very, very good question. I'm glad you raised because I know you gave a great summary of that. It's a very deep question, and I loved you also answered in a way that for you, fairness matters to you. And the reason I'm spending a couple of minutes on this is for the rest of us to think how Justice Bambani is thinking, and he's kind of indirectly teaching us code of ethics. He's telling us I have a strict code of ethics that I follow, and I struggle with it when I think of mediation. And it's a very subtle, I think, beautiful way of teaching the rest of us that ethics are very important in life. We all have to know what is right, what is wrong, how to follow it, how far to go. I'm sorry if I made any mistakes in that reflection.
No, Singh, let me just put another point to you.
Please.
Mediated settlement has to be by consent. Consent is not always free. It is not necessarily volitional.
Absolutely.
And a mother may say that, look, I love my son, my child, but I will not be able to provide for him the way the father will be. But at the end of the day, the purpose of a mediated settlement is everybody goes back happy, truly happy, within oneself. But that mother is not going to walk out of that mediation completely settled, and she will entertain some rancor. So is that what we are looking for in mediation? Can we do better? It's not about whose truth are we serving and whose sense of fairness are we serving. It's even the mother is not truly happy, but in the circumstances she's taking a part.
I wonder, I love the response. I think it makes me think about that can be the real benefit of having a mediator in that situation, that maybe you do it I know there's mediators who believe in everybody should be together the whole time, so mediators who believe in having caucuses, and I do caucuses, right? So I can imagine sitting with the mother and asking those sort of questions. This explicitly, is this what you're helping that person divine what they truly want or how they want to prioritize? Because if I can imagine being in either the father or the mother situation and being conflicted, being angry, and being, and I think as a mediator, you can be helpful to that person to helping them prioritize the best they can. That to me is a wonderful thing that you could do as a mediator.
I have a similar comment, Judge, and then I think some other people had a question, and that is, what is the alternative? So mediation may not provide this mother the best solution, perhaps, and she may not be most happy, though, to choose to pick your word, happiness. But what's the alternative? What if she's not in a mediation? So, in some ways, doing mediation, and I'm biased towards mediation as a process, would be more helpful, even though she may not be most happy. But I think you have a deeper point there. Are we making sense here, Judge?
So she could win a litigation, keep the son and get money, child support. I mean, it depends. So you may say that, look, I don't think this is a fair mediation, so I'll just let it go. Don't settle it. Let the father face the heat in a court, and there's a chance the mother may win. She may not win, which in any case would be your mediated settlement.
Right.
So,
But even if she wins, didn't you say she can't afford the child?
No,
she's been entitled
and child.
Good. No, I was thinking about that. I was thinking I think a mediator should do that too. The mediator should say, if you don't come to agreement, what does it look like?
The larger question,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the larger question is only this, that is fairness at all a consideration? Or do you only want to settle a dispute? Somebody may be pulling a fast one, but it culminates in a settlement. That's a successful mediation, whether fair or unfair.
See, actually,
Is fairness at all a question?
I think it is. But I love that.
can I just add to this? It's the judge's mind who's evaluating and not talking about fairness. I mean, when we sit as a mediator, I'll give you a very instance where a woman comes and tells me, I'm willing to give up maintenance, I'm willing to give up my child's custody. And so the first thing that you think, I mean, as a judge would think that why is she doing this? So, is it fair? But when I sat with her in a caucus, she says, look, my parents have found another man. He's not going to wait for too long and he's not willing to accept me with the child. And I want to move on with my life. So, what is fair for that particular person? I mean, I have to suspend my value judgment.
Yeah. Good point. There's not fairness is in the eye of the beholder too, right? There's not one unitary fairness. I mean, I think it's important to add in this one, especially when it comes to family disputes. There's certainly research that shows that one partner, often the woman, concedes more than they should, and that they may be better off going to litigation in many of these situations.
This reminds me of a case, my good colleague. Some of you worked with him in the past, Pete Robinson. Peter Robinson would talk about a case that he mediated where he said one person, the woman said, I don't want anything from this case, and Pete said, no, you deserve 50% of the property. She said, no, let's just finish the mediation, I want to get rid of it. And Peter is feeling, oh my God, this is so unfair. She's leaving all this money on the table. And then later on, he learned she's marrying a very wealthy man and getting much more money there than where it is. So the question, as you said, is fairness at one point as well. I think we should kind of come to a conclusion now. I see movement in the room, and I also feel like it's been a great meeting. Tell us a little bit about what you're currently working on. Maybe last question from my side, and a quick comment on Janet Martinez and her work on Code Connected.
Thank you. Those are two wonderful things to end on. You know, one thing that we just finished, actually, after this, I'm going to review it. But I've been working with a number of our colleagues from the ABA Dispute Resolution Section Task Force, folks that you would know, like Bruce Meyerson, Nancy Welsh, other folks, because in the American bar, there's been this concern around civil discourse, around respectfulness from lawyers, how lawyers interact with each other. So the task force decided, let's put together a clearinghouse. So in law schools, or if law firms want to do training on civil and what we're calling constructive and civil discourse. So we're providing articles on civil and constructive discourse. We're providing what law schools are teaching something in civil discourse, sometimes in dispute resolution, sometimes in professional identity or leadership, and what are other resources for civil discourse. So that's about to go public. So if not tomorrow, maybe next week. But we're creating a Stanford Law School. You'll be able to Google it. Clearinghouse on civil and constructive discourse. I'll send the links to you as well. So we're excited to get that done, to provide people to think about it, especially in this day and age in polarization. We're doing that policy lab. Working on a state academy where we'll bring together state folks as well. and doing new courses on facilitation, especially in organizational leadership. I think when you think about the individualist versus the collectivist things, how we even run our meetings, how we run our groups, makes a difference. I am working on a book with Nancy Rogers, who's one of the pioneers in the ADR field from the Ohio State University. Here, she was the state attorney general for Ohio. We're all in conflict. The book is titled "The Better Bystander." Whether we're at a church or in a temple or in a neighborhood school board council, there's conflict. What can I do if I'm not the person involved in the conflict? How can I be sometimes I want to just run away, or I want to fight for one side, but what can I do there? So I'm excited working on that book project as well here. But last thing on my colleague Jan Martinez, who some of you may know, who's constantly met with the fellows, the Weinstein Fellows every year, and still she's just finished another book. She's more productive. She's writing a book on artificial intelligence.
Oh wow!
With Amy Schmitz.
Oh wow!
From another person from Ohio State, and that's
Ohio State.
That's going to be coming out in September, later this month. A new book on artificial intelligence and dispute resolution. I co-taught with her, with Jan, dispute system design, again looking at different how courts handle it, how eBay handles it, how do you do a peer grievance mediation program, different ways of doing that. So that's what we are with that here. And I do want to thank you all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your wonderful hosting. Thank you for the questions and the conversation. Made me think a lot. I learned a lot from you today, and it's been wonderful. I hope you enjoy. We're going to have lunch. We're going to go to. We're actually going to take you to. This is where a lot of interesting things happen. This is where the faculty meetings are. So I spend quite a bit of time here. We're going to take you to 320D, which is where a lot of our negotiation and dispute resolution classes and mediation classes are taught. So you'll see one of the classrooms. Later, you'll see some of the new classrooms at all. You'll get a tour as well, and you'll get to go to the campus store as well. So thank you all, and it's been wonderful being with you.
Just a minute, because Deep went and got the lunch. Thank you, Deep, for your help. And thank you for hosting us. And we know how busy you are, and this is a beautiful room, and also your time is most important. Grant Lum is already a leader in the field in this country, not with this position, but all the things you have done in life. I really want you to look at his life, because sometimes we learn and teach creativity. I think he lived a creative life. He doesn't just teach it, he lives it. And that has been wonderful. And this interactive session was very helpful to me personally, just to learn more about you and all the work you've done, Mr. Lum. And I'm very proud of you. I'm someone look up to you and learn from you from far. And your Ohio State has a better program. And now Stanford will become #1 because of you. So, and I'm coming up with my book, since you were mentioning book, Cross-Cultural Intelligence, also getting published hopefully in the fall. And thank you.